executive session and open the public meeting. Reopen the public meeting. And
You turn your mic on. Sorry.
all right. How about now? Can we hear me now? Okay. We're going to close the executive session and reopen the public meeting. And we'll start with roll call. Commissioner Shepard. Here. Commissioner Bell. Here. Commissioner Briscoe is present. Advisory Committee meeting schedule. We have the Marina Advisory Committee, the MAC, March 11th at 6 p.m. The Port Administration Office, Harbor Center Commission Chambers, in person only. We have the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, BIAC, April 17th at 4 p.m. You can join the Zoom meeting. It's listed on our website. The meeting ID, all that stuff is listed on the website, or you can do in person. It's both in person and Zoom. And in person will be at the Aircraft Rescue Firefighting ARF Station, 2005 West Bakerview Road, Bellingham. Public comment. There are two public comment periods, one at 4 p.m. and another at the end of the meeting. Out of respect for everyone who attends the commission meeting, each public comment period may be limited to 15 minutes total. Speakers are asked to keep their comments to less than 3 minutes, and please feel free to submit further comments in writing. With that, we'll move to the consent agenda. Tracy?
There was no public comment.
No public comment?
Nope. Motion to approve consent agenda items A through E.
Did we not have any public comment?
No. Did you want some?
No, we will after. Sure.
Michael, do you have, Commissioner Shepard, do you have any?
Nope, I'm okay.
Commissioner Bell, any
I'm
comments?
perfectly fine.
Tracy, if you please.
Motion to approve the consent agenda items A through E.
Commissioner Bell.
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard.
Also, yes.
Commissioner Briscoe is a yes. With that, I believe we're moving into presentations. The Bellingham International Airport Traffic Control Tower Staffing Update, presented by Matt Rodriguez.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Matt Rodriguez, one of the Airport Operations Managers at Bellingham International Airport. We can get this presentation up. Far right. Bingo. Thank you. All right, so today we'll be discussing an update over the ATC issues that BLI has been experiencing. So today we'll be discussing what an FAA contracted tower is, the cause and effect, and why we have a shortage of controllers nationwide. And then we'll discuss BLI's airspace during operational ATC versus ATC 0. We'll also discuss ATC 0 procedures at BLI, the actions taken by airport management, the result of those actions, as well as the actions of the FAA. So what is a FAA contracted tower? So the FAA established contract towers back in 1982. So the whole purpose of the FAA contracted tower was to reduce and mitigate the costs overall budget to the FAA and Department of Transportation. So currently there are about 265 airports nationwide that have an FAA contracted tower. So these FAA contracted towers are served by those providers. There's 4 providers, and we'll get into that into the next slide. So that makes up about 51% of all federal air traffic control towers is managed by a contracted tower provider. Again, going back into it, why this is, it also contributes to a significant cost savings to the Department of Transportation, roughly about $200 million annually. Also, all federal contract controllers are certified by the FAA, so there's no difference between a controller that works at a contracted tower versus an FAA-employed controller working at an FAA tower. In addition to this, the FAA manages and oversees all aspects of the FAA contract tower program. So that includes the operating procedures, staffing plans, certification, medical tests, security, and so forth. You can see here on this map, the good old United States of America, and it's broken out by service coverage areas. So we have the Western Service Area, Central Service Area, and the Eastern Service Area. So all of the little blue dots you have and the gold dots, the green dots, or the stars, I should say, those are managed by an FAA contracted tower. So currently there's 4 providers. You have Midwest Air Traffic Control Services, there's Robinson Aviation, Robinson, CI Squared Aviation, and Serco Management Services. And as we all know, Serco is the provider for the Western Service Coverage Area and for BLI as well. Any questions regarding this map here?
Is there like a certain size your airport gets to when the FAA takes over control?
Most of it goes by airspace. So BLI is the Delta airspace or Class D airspace. The busier airspaces such as Bravo, Charlie, those are typically managed 24/7, either by the military if it's a military base or installation, or if it's something like SeaTac, like a Bravo airspace, then that's going to be managed by the FAA.
Just notice in the clusters, you've got the Northeast, primarily contractor, but the South is heavily FAA.
Correct.
That's interesting that they would cluster things the way they have. And the Northwest, I assume, I can't really see which ones are green, but we're probably the same as the Northeast. But it looks like almost the entire Northeast corridors, the busiest corridors, are all contracted.
Yeah, about 51% of the entire United States is covered by contracted towers.
Sorry, Bobby, I just did.
No,
made an
that's,
observation.
No, that's a good
okay.
observation.
I'm just kind of wondering why they aren't kind of spread around, dispersed a
You
little
would
more.
think they would be, yeah, they would pick a market. It doesn't look like there was a rationale.
Yeah, and personally, I don't understand the rhyme or reason as to where these contracted towers and what determines where these contracted towers should be placed at. I mean, that's a deeper dive into it, but I'm sure there is a rhyme or reason to it.
That's all right. I just got a look from Bobby that reminds me of a look my wife gives me from time to time.
All right, so cause and effect of why we have such a shortage of national crisis here with shortage of controllers. Many of the causes here, the FAA released a national training initiative back in 2019. We all know that the pandemic put a stop to a lot of things moving forward and forward progress. So that training did come to a halt. It did pick up shortly after the pandemic and after people were able to return back to work, return back to businesses. In addition to this, the job itself, I mean, from the very beginning, it's very difficult to get through an FAA academy and meet all the requirements. On top of that, be able to perform under very stressful workloads. So we do see a lot of controllers either dropping out, not making it all the way through. There are circumstances where a controller will finish the academy and then go to an airport and not make it through that airport, because each controller, no matter where you go to, you have to be qualified at that airport. So you can't just pick up from one airport and then be a controller at that airport to another airport and then automatically be qualified. You still have to go through that process at that location and be qualified, which is typically under another certified professional controller.
So why were we at a peak in 2012? That period.
I don't have that answer right now. That's something I can definitely look up and get back to you.
Wondering if there was, it looks like we've been on a steady decrease since 2012, and then we leveled out in 2017, barring COVID, at the level we're at now.
One thing we could look at is see what the correlation is between commercial operations or just operations in general with aircraft operations, and look at if those have also followed that same trend. Also,
Does it have to do with modernization, do you think, of equipment?
slightly, yeah, there's a lot of, again, like going back to BLI, we don't have radar. So if we take a controller from another FAA facility that has surveillance and radar, and they come over to our airport, they don't have something like that, that either A, might deter them from staying at our airport, and they might go somewhere else, and they can't just shift from tower to tower. In addition to this, the federal regulations, they do mandate controllers that you have to retire at the age of 56. So there's not any controller over the age of 56 still working today.
Geez, you get put out to pasture early in that outfit.
Yeah. So that just creates a constant wave of personnel coming and going.
So I'm assuming since 2012, we've had a greater number of flights pretty much everywhere in the USA, but now we've got half? Not half, but we got almost 1,100 or 1,200 less controllers?
That's
am I
correct.
reading that right?
That's correct. And this goes all the way to 2023. The latest information we found was we're about 30% less staffed than we were in 2012 in controllers nationwide.
We were down pre-pandemic, so it was even down below where we are today, 2018.
And that's where the pipeline really came to a halt, is when the pandemic hit. We were already on a decline of having controllers at airports. And then the pandemic hit, the training pipeline came to a halt, and that whole process then just got delayed for pumping out new certified professional controllers. So we'll quickly dive into BLI's airspace. So Monday through Sunday, without the exception of having ATC 0. So if our tower is fully staffed, our towers of operation is from 07 to 2230. In that time frame, we are under Class Delta airspace. What Class Delta airspace means is that it's controlled for number one. So any departures, arrivals, ground movement, anything going into the taxiways or into the runway, you have to get permission from tower. In addition to this, any aircraft that comes in within a 5 nautical mile range and is below 2,500 feet AGL has to contact our tower. So that's what makes it a controlled airspace. And in this time, outside of this time, so between 2230 and 0700, we go to Class Echo airspace. And those are two different airspaces in the sense that aircraft that are under flying visual flight rules versus instrument flight rules. Under visual flight rules, you do not have to communicate. You do not have to communicate to other pilots. You don't have to communicate to ground personnel. But IFR traffic, you absolutely do. Now, there are circumstances where NAV Canada comes into play into this. So if you file a flight plan, meaning you're flying IFR, instrument flight rules, you file a flight plan, you get clearance from Victoria Approach Center, and then once that aircraft receives that clearance, they begin their takeoff, and they go and they tune back into our, what we call as CTAF, Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. And this is the frequency that all pilots are able to hear each other on in our airspace, whether that be Delta or Echo. Any questions about that?
So if I'm following this correct, between 700 and 2230, we're manned in our tower. The rest of the time, we're not. Is that correct?
Correct, and that's under normal operations.
Okay.
So without ATC 0, without any shortage of controllers, these are the normal parameters of our hours at BLI.
And we don't have anybody in the tower at any other time?
No, not between 2230 and 0700. There's no controllers up there. And the reason because there's a lot less traffic in our airspace.
I get that. Do we monitor still? I mean, if somebody has an emergency, are we contacted somehow, or does Vancouver contact us, or?
So in our airport certification manual, we have it to where the airport rescue firefighters, they do monitor CTAF. So anytime before commercial operation either departs or arrives, we have to be at the RF station 15 minutes prior or after that departure. So any emergencies that are declared will be coming over CTAF frequency.
Yeah, so if we have somebody diverted for an emergency purpose, we're aware of it at the airport before they get there?
Correct.
Okay,
And I want to make clear, I understand, all of this is under the control of the FAA. The port has no jurisdiction to hire, replace, put somebody. We would be in violation of the law if we were to go do that, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So I've also included, just for a visual, is the what it looks like during Class Echo airspace. So anything below 10,000 feet. So going back to it really quick, Class Echo airspace is from the surface up to 18,000 feet. So for the separation that's required from the surface to 10,000 feet, you need to be above 1,000 feet, then this is for VFR, above 1,000 feet of the ceiling, cloud ceiling, below 500 feet, or horizontally 2,000 feet. And this is to maintain that separation from IFR aircraft that are flying through the clouds. Anything above 10,000 feet is required 1,000 feet above the cloud ceiling, 1,000 feet below the cloud ceiling, and then 1 statute mile horizontally from that ceiling. And this is just to provide a greater distance or separation, because at 10,000 feet, typically at that AGL, you have aircraft flying much faster speeds than you are below 10,000 feet. And this is just for quick FYI, BLI ATC 0, we do have a letter of agreement with Serco and our air traffic controllers. So anytime that a controller is unable to work, whether they're out sick, these are the procedures that are put in place immediately. We can read through these. So Victoria Terminal Approach Center and then Seattle Air Route Traffic Control Center, those two entities are notified immediately. And those are the two, the ARTCC and the Approach Center from Victoria. Those are the airports or the controllers that will be issuing out those clearances to those aircraft with flight plans. In addition to this, with all the other infrastructure at the airport, we just make sure all the lighting is on, the Mausers are working, the reels are working. To summarize it, we have procedures in place.
They can actually turn the lights off and on the runway from the airplane?
They can, correct,
Any plane can? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Radio frequency does it.
correct.
Learn something new every day.
Can I get one of those for my car? As I'm driving by, just to flash the neighbors?
That might be it.
Oh,
So what airport management has done so far, we've had ongoing discussions and meetings with NAV Canada, Serco, and the FAA Tower Contracts Manager regarding our operations and the current staffing levels. So we've had some pretty in-depth conversations with Serco, the FAA Contracts Program Manager who manages the contract for Serco, and we've explained our concerns and what we want to see at our airport and try to minimize AT0 as much as possible. We've also reached out to the U.S. Contract Tower Association. The Contract Tower Association, what they do is they coordinate and contract issues on a regular basis with Congress, DOT, FAA, and TSB. They just are a great advocacy for the Contract Tower Association and contract providers. We also sent out a formal letter regarding the airport's concerns about ATC staffing levels. That was sent to our FAA Flight Centers District Office, the Airports District Office, as well as our Airport Safety Certification Inspector as well. So we received really good feedback from all of those offices, and there is action being taken right now. And we'll get into that next slide.
So you're going to give us some major concerns next slide?
Well, I'll give you what we've accomplished so far.
Oh, okay.
We've also made updates with the GA and commercial carriers chief pilots, so they're aware about this. And then, of course, social media outreach. The result of those actions, what we're going to be moving forward with is we have already received an additional controller out of Bend, Oregon. He was the ATM down there. He is now at our airport. He is TDY, which is temporary duty, so he is not going to be staying forever, but he is going to be filling that vacant gap until we get new hires rolled into our tower. So he's currently going through the qualification process right now of being certified at our airport. And he's doing a great job. We can hear him. Heard him yesterday, so he's making friends out there.
Party must be over. They turned out the lights. I was clear over here.
Oh, that's what happened last time.
Saw you coming. Yeah.
With him.
And then we have a second controller who's arriving the first week of April. Again, another temporary duty personnel coming in. So that will bring us up to 4. And then by April 21st, there is a permanent hire that is beginning at BLI. And Serco is continuing to interviewing additional candidates to fill those TDY gaps once those have expired. So we will remain on ATC 0 up until the first controller gets qualified, the second controller whose TDY gets qualified, and then we'll have, on April 21st, a permanent hire. And I'm told that the second temporary duty worker or controller who's coming in will be staying until they get hired by the FAA. So that could be a week, or it could be 6 months, a year, who knows?
But ultimately, the advocacy has had some impact.
Absolutely.
We had a newspaper article, we had some collaboration with our delegation and put some pressure on, and we've gotten some fairly quick response.
We did, yes. Yeah, we made some good progress in the short time of, we were not notified by the FAA regarding ATC 0. This is something that we find out secondhand.
Yeah.
So that was issue number one. So we did make, we did clarify that with both Serco and the FAA Contracts Program Manager, that in any circumstances where we're going to be short-staffed, we need to know as soon as possible.
Do we have a mandatory reporting now in place where if they're short-staffed at the tower, they will automatically tell us?
We will get emails anytime that either a controller calls out or a controller decides to not work anymore, and that results.
They weren't extending us that courtesy when we had this problem.
No, they were not.
Well done.
And then the actions taken by the FAA. So what's called the Enhanced Air Traffic Collegiate Training Initiatives. So this actually began back in 1989, if I'm not mistaken. There was a traditional route that the ATCTI had established, and there's differences between what the traditional one was and then what was passed in 2024 and approved by the FAA. So the Enhanced Air Traffic Collegiate Training Initiative rolled out in 2024. And we'll talk about what the difference is between the traditional and the enhanced. So for the Enhanced Air Traffic Collegiate Training Initiative, there's 4 different locations, and they all got approved late fourth quarter of last year. So those locations are the University of North Dakota, University of Oklahoma, Tulsa Community College, and Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. So these 4 colleges have been approved by the FAA that follows the FAA's guidance and curriculum as it relates to qualifying air traffic controllers. And next slide, we'll get into what the differences are between the two. It is the FAA's goal this year in 2025 also just to hire 2,000 controllers, either from the military or private industry. And that's an aggressive number, but I do love their ambition, and hopefully that plays out well for them.
Is that a recent guidance, or is that one that was carried over from 2024?
That was a recent
This
guidance.
is post-Doge?
So, correct. So the key differences between the enhanced ATCTI versus the traditional ATCTI is you can see that the traditional and enhanced, as far as the curriculum goes, is that the traditional just covered the air traffic fundamentals, whereas the enhanced one is equivalent to the FAA Academy training. The speed to hiring process is that once a traditional ATCTI graduate, they still have to go through that FAA Academy, whereas the enhanced one, graduates just bypass the FAA Academy. So speed to workforce is that the enhanced ATCTI is that once they are completed with that curriculum, they are not going to the academy, and instead they're going right to an FAA facility to get on-the-job training. Questions?
No, you answered mine. Thank you.
Commissioner Shepard,
Nope, seems like we're doing what we should here. Thanks.
and then have a good job. Good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, Matt.
Okay, that brings us to, Tiffany, Marina's Rules and Regulations Update.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tiffany D. Simone, Director of Maritime. So no action being requested today. I'm going to go over proposed changes to our rules and regulations. I have brought the actual professional operators to back me up in case you have questions, but in the interest of transparency, just presenting the proposed changes for the commission to give feedback on, and then in an upcoming future meeting, we'll come forward with an action item for approval. But give folks opportunity to give us feedback in that in between. So, we're moving the keyboard. Okay. No? How do I go forward? Oh, it's just delayed, maybe? Okay. I'm going to apologize. It's 19 slides. It's dry, but I'll try to move through, but please stop and ask questions. We'll be scratching down notes if there is feedback from the commission. So red text identifies new policy, language and rates, and green text strikeout is deleted language. Types of changes, there's housekeeping, which is language clarification. You can read removal of redundant or obsolete language. Types of changes would include change to existing policies, new policies, and rate changes. Let me preface this. We aren't talking about mortgage rates today. That's not today. That'll be in a future meeting. Housekeeping items, we changed some definitions. I can read through them. The Blue Line mortgage model, we removed Blue Line and just refer to it now as the mortgage model. Delinquent accounts, we changed from 60 to over 30 days from invoice dates. Late fees, we cleaned up the definition. Manager, we removed marine terminals and added the Bellingham Cruise Terminal. Removed marine terminals manager completely, and terms of payment were defined and removed cash from clarified payment due date. That's a list of housekeeping items and what we did. So that's available for folks to take a look at in closer depth. Changes to existing policies. Here's kind of the meat of it all. So you'll recall that red is additional language. So welding or plate burning is not permitted on floats. All hot work must be done at specific docks as designated by the port. We are adding a fire watch must be put into place for 1 hour after work is completed. I skipped.
So to clarify that, that's only for hot work?
Yeah,
Not just,
correct.
so 4.2 is hot work specific?
Yes, and I'm trying to go back. There we go. I almost skipped over the mortgage wait list. Let me get to that. We are proposing a change in that. So if you recall from several presentations, we have our mortgage wait list and we have our birth change request list. Our birth change request list is for people who are current customers. Right now, that list, we go to that list first, and then if there's anybody who wants that size slip, we move on to the wait list. We never ever get to the wait list. So we are proposing that we merge the two lists as such, so that people who are on the wait list and on the birth change list are in order of their date of application. Does that make sense?
So, maybe I didn't hear this correctly. If you have a birth change request, you're on that list,
Yep.
and you can change a birth, doesn't that open up the birth you were in to somebody on the wait list?
Or on the birth change request list. That's usually how it goes.
Still, wouldn't that, somewhere in the domino, jump frog thing, whatever you want to call it, there's going to be a birth come free, correct?
Yes,
So,
to somebody on the birth change request list generally. So what we're proposing is, so if you have a 36-foot slip right now, you're a current customer, and you want a 40-foot slip in the future, right now you would get on the birth change request list for that. What we're saying is you now get on the wait list. There's only one list, and it's by your date of application.
So the birth
So that
change
means-
request would have priority?
Well, we won't have any priority
That's right.
for current customers.
they go to the back of the line if they change their mind.
But the day-to-day, today it is, if
Yes.
you have a birth change request, you have priority.
Yes.
You can change birth, and if somebody on the wait list has to wait.
Yes,
And you may have made that birth change request last week, but the guy's been on the waiting list for 3 years.
yes,
And what you're saying is that they will all be equal based on date.
date of application.
I actually like that.
How long is our wait list?
It's just such a difficult question to answer. The wait list is very long, depending on the size of the boat and the length of the birth change request list.
So now we're gonna have a list that's that long, two of them, now it's gonna be this long,
Yeah.
right?
So for current customers who are already customers of us, they're not gonna have any built-in advantage.
Correct.
They're gonna
They-
have to potentially be at the bottom of a list.
They're
that
going to have to,
includes
their date will
non-
be on their date of their application
Yeah,
for a different slip.
yeah.
But they will continue to have the slip they own.
Yes,
We're not kicking them out just because they put an application in.
correct.
So they'll have a home.
Yes.
Okay.
Unless their boat's bigger.
Unless they get a bigger boat.
Yeah, if they're
Oh, if they buy a
purchasing a boat, it inhibits them from purchasing a vessel. So it's not just, you gotta wait. You may stop a purchase of a vessel or a sale of a vessel.
Because
for
you
some.
can't move.
So it actually, it affects more than just that wait list. It affects our tenants who are selling boats, and upland tenants have a business selling boats. It affects that as well, so,
You would have to anticipate if
Right.
you were going to,
all right.
yeah.
Did you get all that, Dave?
That's a sticky puddle.
I'm trying to move forward, but the computer, okay. Utilization of moorage. This is a added language, a change to existing policy. A vessel moored under the condition that it's going to be retrofitted to accommodate active commercial fishing will need prior authorization from the harbor master in writing before the ACF rate is applied. So if they are going to actively retrofit something, they just get permission from the harbor master and then they would receive the ACF rate, moorage rate. If at the end of the agreed time period, more work is needed to complete the retrofit, contact the harbor master for authorization. From Labor Day to Memorial Day, current moorage customers can use the visitor dock at the reciprocal harbor up to 3 days per month without paying visitor moorage. Contact the harbor office. During peak season, regular visitor moorage rates will apply. So this is essentially making the reciprocal benefit that we have between the harbors on the shoulder seasons and not during peak season. Okay. Oh. Question?
Yeah, clarity for me.
Yep.
So if I'm reading it correctly, our customers who have stalls can go tie up at the visitor's moorage dock during,
3 days per month.
yeah. We have a visitor's dock full of people who have stalls and nobody else could tie up.
That's why yep.
And we're taking that out or allowing it?
We are redefining the time period of when that can happen. We're saying that can happen in the shoulder seasons, but during peak season,
Okay, all right. So
They
right
would-
now it happens year round.
that's right.
Okay, I got you. All right.
Change to existing policy. This is for partnership and vessel title changes, vessel sale or title transfer of moorage slips. If a new owner requires moorage, they will need to obtain it via the moorage wait list. If a partner or LLC member who is not the slip holder desires to become the primary moorage customer, they must apply to the wait list before being offered moorage. This is a lot of mumbo jumbo language for the fact that we have currently you can become a partner in a vessel, and as long as you're a partner for 30 months, then you would receive that slip when the transfer of ownership moved to you. So if somebody has a 36-foot boat, they want to sell their boat, they can have a partner join on their registration, and then after 30 months, the slip would, then the partner would then get the slip. So essentially transferring moorage. So people are using this as a loophole to skip the wait list. So we're asking to close that loophole.
So on the 5.7,
Yep,
if I want to sell my vessel, whoever buys it cannot have the stall it's tied in.
correct.
That I have heartburn with. You're stopping sales of vessels from older people if they want to get out. Not that I'm selling, I'm just saying, if you have people that are retiring, getting out of the business, they're selling their business, you're inhibiting the person that's selling the business by doing this.
Those,
Am I understanding this correctly?
you want to explain?
Like
Commissioners, Aaron Bisson, Squaxin Harbor Master. Currently, right now, that is the policy. The slip doesn't transfer with the sale of the vessel by our current rules and regs.
Does or does not?
Does not.
Under our current system.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
So what does this change?
We're saying that if you're going to be a partner on a boat, the slip belongs to the original person who entered into the moorage agreement.
Oh, no, I was on 5.7.
Oh, sorry. 5.7. Oh, God, I didn't touch anything.
So that's not, that does the thing about partners or LLC in the top part there. That just says if you sell your vessel to someone, they cannot have the slip it's in.
Correct.
The only way that we transfer a slip to a new customer or a person purchasing the vessel is if there's no wait list. So if there's a slip available, that does transfer to the
It
person.
is the way it is today.
That is,
Yes.
yes.
So what's the change?
I don't think there is any change. I think it might just be clearing up some language.
Clarifying,
Yeah.
putting it in writing.
Okay.
Liveaboards, we're asking to increase the minimum size to 30 feet.
So I want to go back to the other one for a second. I have a
Yep.
question. I realize it's where we're at now. To keep our commercial fishing industry fleet here, I'm wondering why we aren't transferring stalls with those commercial vessels. I understand the recreational side of it, but commercial is economic for our waterfront. It's for all of our businesses. Why aren't we allowing the transfer of that slip with the sale of that vessel that's a legitimate sale to, then the boat's gonna stay here and fish out of here and work out of here? Why are we not keeping those boats here?
I'm guessing that there's not as much of a wait list for the active commercial fishing fleet.
So I think some clarification on that one. Commercial fishing vessels are completely separate. That's the sale of a business. The slip would transfer.
Okay, very good, Aaron, thank you,
Sorry about that.
thank you.
So for this liveaboard, what's the rationale here?
26-foot boat is too small to live on.
How many people does that impact?
Yeah, do we have current
Ooh.
people
Does
who
anybody know
are?
the numbers on how many 26-foot liveaboards we have?
I don't have exact numbers, but it wouldn't impact anybody currently in being a liveaboard in Squaxin or Blaine Harbor. So it'd just be going forward.
All right.
What's the smallest boat we have a liveaboard on?
Currently, it's 26.
No, actively. You said it wouldn't impact anybody, so.
So
Oh, you're
anybody
saying
that's-
your grandfather, the
Yes.
26ers. How many 26ers are out there?
Right off the top of my head, I'd probably say 15.
15?
Quite a few.
And how many liveaboard vessels do we have total in the harbor then?
Blaine is permitted 50 and Squaxin is permitted 100.
Thank you.
Good idea to stay there. I'm just literally the talking head.
Wearing shoes out.
Trying to move forward, but no dice. Oh. Converitas? Okay. Visitor transient vessel moorage. Any vessel visiting harbor facilities for the purpose of having scheduled work done by a leasehold tenant or a subtenant of the port is entitled to our merchant voucher program. This program currently allows up to 3 days of moorage per month without charge if arranged with harbor staff prior to having work done. The owner or operator of the visitor vessel is responsible for moorage arrangements. We're proposing to add this as an effect from Labor Day to Memorial Day.
And is this for commercial or recreational?
Recreation.
Okay, thank you.
This is additional language to boat launch activity. As you know, our boat launches are busier and busier every year. And so just clarifying what kind of activity happens so that the language we're proposing to add is the port maintains a boat launch for use by harbor users, each of the harbors for a charge, and is only to be used for launching and retrieval of vessels. Moorage on the floats is limited to 15 minutes. Boat launches are not to be used for the loading or unloading of fishing gear and equipment. Storage of vessels or unattached trailers in parking lots is prohibited. No RV or oversized vehicle parking is allowed in the parking lot. Pressure washing is not allowed. And violators are subject to towing at owner's risk and expense. A lot of these things we have posted already at our boat launches, but didn't have it included in our policy.
What's the remedy? It may be prohibitive, but what's the remedy?
Who's enforcing it?
That's another way of asking what I do.
I was just clarifying that for you.
We've
The guy who speaks English.
We've definitely increased staffing at those particular pinch points during super busy times.
Do we have the ability to call somebody and tell them?
Sure. Okay.
I think the common practice is we typically throw a note on there.
Yeah. Loading zones and work docks. Vessels must check in with the harbor office within 1 hour of arrival or first thing in the morning and inform staff of the anticipated length of stay. If the vessel owner requires longer stay than posted, owner must receive permission from harbor staff. Customers who are currently moored at Squalicum Harbor are allowed 3 nights per calendar month at no charge. Regular marge charges under the applicable rate shall apply for vessels staying longer than the posted time limit.
I'm assuming this is speaking to the sawtooth.
Yep, I think the next slide is the picture. Is this? No, maybe not. Sorry, I don't have access to the slides right now. But yes, this is in particular the sawtooth when we say work dock. Sale of seafood. This is how we've been operating over the past, I would say, at least 4 years.
Was there one under the last slide?
Sorry, can you go back? Conduct. Oh, quiet hours in the marina are from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Designated areas to be used on first come, first served basis. Check in with the harbor office prior to unloading. Commercial fishers are permitted to unload their catch and take it off port property. Catch must be unloaded in containers to reduce scurry or water from contaminating the dock surface and attracting nuisance. And then in Blaine Harbor only, wholesale seafood buyers are not permitted to operate on port property. The product may only be unloaded into vehicles belonging to the purchaser. Seafood may not be unloaded into vehicles operated by wholesale seafood buyers. This has been a point of contention. We've talked about it many times here.
So the product may only be unloaded into vehicles belonging to the purchaser.
Yeah, I have asked the same question.
I think we may have missed on the wording of that one. I think it was in reference to the seafood being landed and recorded on a fish ticket. Whoever fished it can also offload it at the facility.
So
I think that word might be, yeah, we caught that one before, too.
I think we can correct that when we come forward.
Belonging to the fisher.
Yeah, the fisher. Yep, we'll change that language.
What's gurry?
Slimy water and that.
Okay, well, learned a new word.
This one is, we removed the weekly rate. Help me out, Aaron. Remove the ACF weekly rate that was established. It was half of the full rate. We haven't been using it, and that didn't change when our rates changed. And so it will be either the weekly or the monthly rate, whichever is less. I get it? Okay. Oh, no, I'm not ready yet. And then the addition is 1/2 of the visitor rate per foot will be charged to vessels using the visitor dock for longer than 1 hour, but not more than 5 hours, and departing by 5 p.m. the same day. Go forward. So on the left, the current is 25 cents per foot per day plus regular moorage. You can see on the right is what we propose for the change. I'll let you digest that a little bit. Take a look at it you can.
This is commercial on the sawtooth is what we're talking about?
Yep. So the next picture, I think now is where the sawtooth is.
So if I'm a mortgage customer, I'm gonna pay 25 cents a foot a day while I'm laying there, okay?
Yep.
If I'm not a customer, I'm paying 50 cents a foot, okay? And we're not limiting the time we're there?
That is what we're currently proposing, yeah. But after, no, we currently don't limit the time, no. Sorry.
See, we're proposing a limited time on the right.
Sorry, I jumped ahead on that one.
Oops.
Do you want to go back to that? Can you go back, please?
So what are we proposing on the right here?
Proposed March through October, non-mortgage customers
And this is for the Sawtooth as well, right?
for the Sawtooth.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
So you see the first 7 nights is the rate, and then 7 through 30, and so on.
Okay.
So we have a non-mortgage customer rate and a current mortgage customer rate. And that's also broken out seasonally by those 2 boxes.
And that's a fourfold increase from 25 cents to $1?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the rationale for that much increase?
The rationale is to keep people using it and moving along.
I can give you clarity on that. We got guys that don't want to go out, walk out the float to their boats. So they pull in there and they tie up like it's their stall, so they can drive down in their car and look at their boat. That's what happens. That's what most of it's about, and it plugs up the dock, you know, for transient guys coming in loading gear or want to work, get the gear and go. We've got a dock plugged up with boats that aren't albacore fishing because it's the off time or whatever the case may be. It's been getting abused for several years, and this comes from Tiffany and I talked a little bit, and I kind of pushed for this, that we need to get some clarity on the rules on that dock and try and take away the abuse that we see by some of our local guys not wanting to walk out to their boats. Basically what it is.
We're just trying to disincentivize people who are leaving their boats there for utter convenience.
Right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
It's a work dock.
Okay.
Okay, next. There's the work dock that we were just talking about. So those are the areas that those rates are applicable to. Next slide.
That was an old picture.
Here are some proposed weight changes. We're proposing changing our recreational wait list fee from $35 a year to $100 a year. We are proposing an increase to our boat launch fees to $12 per launch or $125 annually. Application and renewal fees are for one slip size request, and a separate waiting list application will need to be completed for each additional slip. This is again in the effort to make our wait list turnover.
This makes my head hurt a little bit. Because you've got somebody who doesn't own a boat, wants to own a boat, and is on the list, so we're gonna make it more expensive for the guy who doesn't own a boat, doesn't have a slip. But we're not gonna look at the slip rates to keep the boats churning through the marina. So
Well, we
let's
might
make
look
it-
at the slip rates.
Make it more expensive to be on a list, encouraging a shorter list because they don't want to spend the money to wait, rather than encouraging the turnover of boats in the marina.
I think it's both.
Oh, promise me that.
I mean, it's
Don't-
ultimately your
We're
decision,
gonna have a
but
separate conversation about
Yeah.
mortgage rates.
yeah, I think this also trues up the list a little bit. It means you're a little bit more serious, that you really want to, you're not maybe dreaming that in 10 years you'll pay $35 a month for 10 years, but maybe you won't pay $100 if you don't really intend on ever getting a boat.
Well, there's another angle you could take. You could double that. And if they actually come up with a boat and they get on the thing, then they get that towards their mortgage.
Sure could. We'll talk about that in the rate discussion, I suppose. Okay.
Or half their money or whatever goes towards some, you know. I mean, if you're trying to get deadbeats off the list, I don't think $100 is gonna do it anymore.
So applying your wait list fee to your mortgage, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I wrote it down. Okay, next slide. Non-compliance fee. Non-compliance fee will be charged to any upland storage customer who does not meet the rate qualifications. After 3 non-compliance fees, it doesn't have to be consecutive, the upland storage agreement will be terminated. Non-compliance upland storage fee we're proposing is $500 a month. This is part of that web locker audit and storing things in the harbor where they aren't designated storage areas. So gives us a little bit of teeth to move equipment and things along that are there that shouldn't be there.
You mean trucks parked in the web locker and stuff
I thought
like
I was
that?
going to
Is
get
that-
a lot of feedback on that one.
Is that what we're, that type of thing?
Yeah.
Okay. And then if they park out in the middle of the parking lot, just leave it there? That's considered?
That's, yep.
Okay, I'm
Yep.
good with all of that.
I thought that was going to be one of contention. Sometimes I can't guess with you three. Okay, next slide. That's it. Any other questions or feedback? And again, so this is available for folks to take a look at. I know probably Dan and his folks will want to take a close look at some of those, and then we're open to feedback. You can always get us on our website at the little contact us and email Marinas or give us a call directly. That's it. Thanks.
Any questions?
Quick question, has this gone through MAC yet?
Yes, several times we've talked to Mac about these ones.
How'd Mac feel?
Well, we came forward with these suggestions, so they didn't have any negative.
Mac is in, they're in step with what you've showed us.
Yes.
this evening?
Aligned here.
Yep.
Okay,
I think two times, at least two times, we presented to Mac these.
all right, very good.
Okay, so we'll come forward at a future meeting with an action with these proposals and then with your feedback.
And to the listening public, MAC is not a person, it is the Marine
Sorry,
Advisory.
committee. Yeah, thanks.
We didn't just run this by MAC,
MAC.
It's Mac attack.
ran it by our committee.
Thank you, Tiffany. Okay, our next presentation is meetings and events facility rental rates update presented by Stephanie and Wiley.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Stephanie Wiley, Community Outreach Manager for the Port, here today because in a few weeks we want to come back to the Commission with proposed rate changes for our event facilities, but wanted to have an opportunity to talk through this with you all and get feedback from the Commission before we bring any proposed rate changes to you. So the three facilities that we are looking at for rate changes are the Squalicum Boathouse, the Bellingham Cruise Terminal Dome Room, and the Fisherman's Pavilion. We do not intend to propose any rate changes for the Blaine Boating Center, so I kind of left that off the list for today, so we'll just focus on these three. So on this page, we have kind of the space use for the facilities in 2024, so you can see the events that we had in each space, the reserved hours in each space, and then the top 5 event types in those facilities. And it's especially our weekends really fill up at all of these facilities. I think for the Fisherman's Pavilion for June through September of 2025, we had every single Saturday booked by October of last year. So they're really, really popular facilities, especially for weekends, and are getting a lot of use, which is great. I have here some of our market comparisons. So when we're looking at rate changes for our facilities, we do market comparisons with event venues all throughout Whatcom County. We have also started doing market comparisons with some event venues in Seattle because we're starting to see more and more customers coming up from Seattle to use our facilities, and not just weddings, but we get company events, retreats, and meetings. So people are using our facilities more and more. So we want to keep in mind what that Seattle market looks like as well. And when we're looking at our rates, we are really trying to fall in the middle of where rates are for events. We don't want to be so low that we are undercutting private facilities and stealing business away from them, but we also want to remain accessible to our customers and not be too high in our rates. So we're really looking for that middle ground, and you can see on here we are quite low with our rates right now. Any questions on this?
So
Just take it in for a minute.
Absolutely.
the top half of the list here, how many in Whatcom County are above us here? What we got, where's the Majestic at? I'm not familiar with that.
The Majestic is on
Forced.
Forest,
Forest,
yeah.
yeah.
So there are 5
Claremont.
that are from Seattle, from the Seattle area that are above us. The rest are from Whatcom County.
Just the numbers on your Fisherman Pavilion, there's fewer weeks available because of the work being done there, correct?
There
So
are,
that's
yes.
To put those numbers in perspective.
Yes, yeah. And we are starting to book more and more in the shoulder season. And I work really closely with Aaron, with our harbor master, to figure out if we get those requests that come in during the off season, does it make sense for us to allow those events to happen? So we work really collaboratively on that.
So is the proposal going to be to move the green and yellow line up to the bottom of the blue, or where are you at with that?
I can show you on our next slide.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so looking at the proposed increases, so we're proposing a 1.25% increase for the cruise terminal and the pavilion, and a 1.3% increase for the boathouse. And we're specifically looking at our block rates, which is when somebody has to book a full day or half a day. We have hourly rates that folks can book within 60 or 90 days of their events at a 4-hour minimum. So we're just talking about our block rates right now. So you can see if we applied that rate increase to the 2024 revenue, what that difference would be. So if we had the exact same amount of events under the new increase, you can see that we would have made $82,000 more in revenue last year.
From a perspective, where would that put us to the blue line in the middle, right below it?
So the Fisherman Pavilion, for example, was 1,700. If you do your increase, you're going to be at 2,125. Is that how I take it?
Yes.
Can you go back to
And
the
that'll
other?
go back.
Let me see.
The dome is going to go up as well, right?
Ooh, can we go back 2 slides? Thank you. Yes, so all 3 of these will move up some. We have not yet set, we have tentative rates, but we have not fully settled on this. Kind of wanted to get that feedback from you all first. So it would be slightly bumping up that Saturday, those block rates for each of the 3 facilities.
Who's our prime competitor for the pavilion? We don't really have any, do we?
I mean, the closest comparison would maybe be Depot Market Square, but our facility is a lot bigger than Depot Market Square. And we also provide furniture for our customers, which they do not have furniture in their facility.
And nothing has that view.
Nothing has that view, yeah. And we do also, another benefit that we hear a lot from, especially our Seattle customers, is I can't believe parking is included. So having the amount of parking that we do near all of our facilities is a really big bonus.
Oh, we could take the airport model and,
I hear the gears grinding already.
oh, the capitalist in me is coming out. Yeah, I think we could raise the prices on a couple of these, more than the 1.25. Do you think we'd lose much business?
I don't necessarily think that we would lose much business. I think right now we are getting more inquiries than we are able to book. So because our rates are so low, I think our facilities, I think a customer was telling us that they found the cruise terminal through a Facebook group that was like budget weddings in Whatcom County, and which is great, and heard that our staff was great to work with, which we love. So she was like, yep, that's the facility I'm going to get married at. So I think that we're not considering raising them so much that it would really hurt us in terms of business. I think we'll stay pretty busy in all of our facilities because we have nice facilities and amazing views, and I think people are going to continue wanting to rent them.
So let's not forget, in the scheme of things here, that we raise it to the point to where some people can't afford to have what's here because we think we can just raise it. I think we need to keep in mind that there's people that will enjoy this at a little lesser price that can't afford to come here if they're priced out of it, and I don't think that's the right thing to do. I agree we need to go up a little bit. I don't disagree with that. But I don't want to go up in this part up here to where, you know, the people that live here that maybe aren't making the wages they are in Seattle or Vancouver cannot afford to enjoy what the port's got to offer for them.
Yeah, to your point, there's fewer people below our margin, fewer places for the less expensive below us than there are above us.
Yeah.
When's the last time we raised these rates?
The cruise terminal, the last time those rates were raised was in 2019. I believe the boathouse, we did, I think, an hourly rate change for the boathouse a couple of years ago. And the pavilion, we did an hourly rate change a couple of years ago as well. We don't currently have a block rate for the pavilion, so the proposal is that we set a Saturday block rate because it's hard for us when somebody just comes in with a 4-hour rental in the middle of a Saturday when we could rent it out for a full day, so.
Okay. I'm just wondering if there should be a regular process of increase
Yeah,
here so that it is predictable.
right.
And keeps up with inflation.
Sure. Yeah, we do these market comparisons every year and take a look at all of our rates and look at all of the feedback. We survey all of our customers, or we send a survey to all of our customers after their event to get their feedback. So we use all of that data to decide if it makes sense for a rate increase. We don't necessarily think we always need to be increasing the rates because, again, we do want to just kind of be right in the middle. But it has been a few years since we've done the cruise terminal, so I think we can be a little bit more regular with it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Commissioner Shepard, Commissioner Bell? I have none. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Okay, the big guy's up now.
So this one's on there. We had several conversations about doing a charrette or a work study on the waterfront. We were trying to schedule that for April. Commissioner Bell expressed interest in doing one prior to that, so he wanted to switch gears and do the airport next and get that scheduled rather than the waterfront.
And I was going to kind of do this under other business, but since you introduced it, let me kind of go through this. I think the airport's probably a pretty good place to start if we're going to do this anywhere else on the port, because it's manageable. We know what the parameters are. We know what we're dealing with. It's kind of fixed, and before we get to a more complicated look at some of the other things. But I really wanted to go through some of the rationale for what I was asking. And it kind of fell into play a little bit this week when I was looking at a couple of leases that we're looking at for airports and for some of the other places. As you drive around and look, and you're asking to go put a business in one place, we don't really have, what I'm looking to put in place is a big picture of what's needed, what are we looking for, what's the overview. And I wanted to see that we couldn't put in a coordinated development plan. So let's say we lease one of the industrial lots, that what's going to go there next is synergistic with that development, that it accompanies that development well, that we have a look at what the infrastructure is. I think I noticed a couple of the roads that might need to be upgraded, some infrastructure that might need to be put in place. I want to make sure that we've talked to the neighboring businesses that are in the area to say, look, these are the places that we're looking at. We're looking at a big picture. I want all of the stakeholders to come in and have a chance to comment on how it impacts them. If we're at the airport, for example, I'd love to see Grace from Alpha come in. There's a couple of the new tenants that are being proposed, and say, if you're proposing this here, then what goes there matters. And what does that look like so that it feels like we're driving the bus? And what are our existing capabilities on the site? What are the existing businesses? I kind of want to get a picture of that. How does it all fit into a development plan that moves forward. And then identify some of the timeframes for, if you're going to put a light industrial area here on this block, then what's going to go next to it? What do the roads look like? What's going to help that light industrial area succeed? If there's a lot next to it, what goes there matters. If it's to be synergistic, is really my goal, is to try to help the businesses we put there become successful. And I really want the stakeholders to have that input, because we want them to tell us what it takes for them to be successful in that lot. I really care that we have engagement from everybody involved, like the city, the county, any of the stakeholders, community groups, NGOs, anybody who might be. I mean, I'm at the airport, you got to pull Bert in at some point and say, here's where the airport industrial ground looks. But by the time we're done, the whole goal is to be able to picture that and say, we're going to do a light industrial park here. What does the next section look like? And how is this going to grow to facilitate that vision so that it's not us waiting for somebody to come along or respond to an RFP? We kind of take the control of how it looks into our own hands. And I'm saying this about the airport, but I also believe this about some of the other areas around the port, is that we kind of, through this visioning process, get enough feedback from the stakeholders, from the community, to say, what are we going to do? And I honestly think it's going to help real estate sell, lease properties. I think it's our obligation to do this as the ADO, basically for the entire county, so that we can say from a county standpoint, what are we doing in the maritime industry, in the real estate industry, with our airport, with our waterfront, what all this looks like. And the time frame is whatever the time frame is. I hopefully don't want to put in a lot of staff time on this. That's not my goal. The goal is to maybe see if we couldn't get a facilitator in, or maybe do some of this elsewhere. But my objective is to understand the community values and some of the pressures that are on them in those areas. I took some time to think this through, which is unusual for me. Create a more understandable plan for all areas where the jobs are created and exist. And that means that it's predictable. If you're going to go to the airport, or you're going to go to the marine trades area, we know what that development looks like over a long period of time. The community values have been brought in. We're not going to violate anybody's, sensibilities as we go through this, or we've heard those sensibilities and we proceed anyway. I mean, it's one of those where everybody gets a chance to have that dialogue, and then we find out who needs help and who's been looking for help, who can grow their business better if we take this particular section, and you can only get that from listening. What can we do to help you with your beverage business out there at the airport? Or what can we do to help you with your transportation business? What can we put next to you that will be an ancillary or a benefit to you? And then I want to develop a plan where I want to know not only who needs help, but who's killing it, right? Who's growing like crazy, and who do we have to make room for? And I would say that about the waterfront and maritime industry. We can take a look at All-American Marine, and they're killing it, right? So they need, pre-tariff, they're killing it. But how do we help you grow, and how do we design this so that you're involved, and then everybody's involved in that process? What data do we have that's available? What kind of visuals do we need, to do some long-term planning in those areas? And then as far as the stakeholders, I want the stakeholders to be obviously us at the commission, but I want to be with the city. I don't want it to be a shock when we move in an area with a certain movement of anything, that anybody feels like they've been left out or they weren't a part of this process. And when I say that, I have had a conversation with the mayor. I've had a conversation with a couple of other elected officials that at times they're not sure what we're going to put where, when it's going to go next, and there's a little bit of a whiplash sometimes. So involving them in the process of what we do. And I felt the airport was a good place to start. The county executive office should be there. Our planners should be involved. Transportation people should be involved. What do the roads look like? All the small businesses, organizations should be involved if we're going to be doing this. What the neighborhoods believe, what the business groups believe, and then what the stakeholders have. And at the end of the day, the objectives are to be, how do we get really good at understanding what the community values are, what the community responses are gonna be, but let everybody know, everybody have an opportunity to comment, everybody have an opportunity to see what the plans are, and plot it out logistically,
Okay.
et cetera. So that's my comment, and I really don't want to put a stress on this, so the only thing I could think of is that maybe we find an outside party that that knows how to do this and uses as little staff time as possible, but kind of can organize the NGOs or the neighborhood associations and bring in the city and bring the people in. And when it comes to the maritime community, we get to the maritime side, we've got the Working Waterfront Coalition, we've got the fishermen's, we've got those people involved to say, what do you want to see here from the port? So that we're building out according to that vision. And I don't, by any stretch of the imagination, think this is going to take a year. It's going to take, longer than that to put together. But I thought if we started with the airport, we could cut our teeth and figure out what does a good airport development plan look like? What lands are available? If we're going to put a light industrial park there, and there's a lot next to it, should we continue that light industrial? And what do the airport people need? What does Alpha need? What does this new light industrial customer need? So that's really what I'm asking the commission to consider, is going through a process like that so that when it comes time to develop on the airport property, we can say, this is what we're looking for. We can narrow it down into a band and not just have a vacant lot that we put an RFP out for somebody to respond to. To me, that feels like we're on a bus and we're driving the bus and somebody gets on the bus and the bus goes that direction, rather than the bus being the driver in this particular instance, and we're driving it towards that end use. And once we have one good light industrial ground developed, say at the airport, if the lot next to it is available, how do we make that light industrial more successful by building something on the adjacent property that we choose, that we solicit, and when we go out for an RFP on a piece of property, we know what industry to target, and we know what the impacts are going to be. So
Is this one meeting or a series of meetings?
it's got to be a series.
It sounds like a lot to accomplish at one meeting.
Well,
no, there's
it
no-
also sounds like, it's a 2-year process probably, so what do we do in the meantime if somebody shows up and it's a good business and it's not in concert with what we're.
Well, you make a gut, you make a gut
I
check.
understand what you're saying. I get it. I've got to go back a little bit though, because I believe the last time we talked about doing this, it was about the waterfront. Now, I'm pretty sure in the background, staff's probably been preparing things for the waterfront. And now if I heard correctly, we want to step up the timetable, but we're going to change the whole program that our staff is,
No, I didn't put anything I didn't put a specific time frame. I'm just outlining what I think a process would look like. I don't know what time frame it takes.
I understand that, but we spoke to the waterfront as being the first one, so I'm sure staff has been working on it.
Oh, no, I think we've discussed going to the airport before that, because I don't know that we can do the waterfront that quickly.
Well, my recollection.
Plus,
was
I also think we're going to learn something by doing the airport.
I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying, we've already, I think in the background, have we not had people working on the waterfront stuff, Rob?
Yeah, we have, and we've done some coordination with the city on that because they are a partner there. They do the roads and the parks, so we've talked to them a bit as well. I do agree that the airport is far less complicated than the waterfront, so it might be a better place to start. But I also want to caution that if it's going to be a couple-year commitment to doing this, and we're going to hire an outside facilitator like Mall Foster or someone to do this, you're talking about a couple $100,000 effort here. It's not going to be cheap.
Yeah, part of me just knows that it's 2024 and the community's changed. I think we felt that. I think a deeper outreach is important. And I don't know about the money. I don't know if it is Mall Foster. I've given no thought to that. Just know that I just believe it's important to have all those stakeholders hearing as much input as we can. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is listening to the people that we have on our property now and how we help them become more successful.
Oh, I agree. I'm just trying to figure out, in my mind, it's like, we've got a very competent staff here that's very familiar with our lands and what have you, and I have issues with I've always had issues with going outside the port staff to get things done, because number one, it's very expensive, and number two, if we don't do that, then we kind of wasted that money and time. So figuring out what we want to do or what it should look like, if you want to have public meetings, get the input, I think that's great. My personal opinion is going to a third party to have them figure out what we want, and why are we all here?
Yeah,
We should be able to figure out something.
yeah, I'm feeling like, Brian, you've done the most of these type of events. Do you have some kind of guidance for us? You've hosted a number of different, whether they're listening sessions or charrettes, where people from the public come. We're often asking them to evaluate several proposals that we've identified to give us some strategic direction. Make sure we're communicating, one, which is always a good thing, communicate to the public clearly, and then elicit their opinion. I think those are some broad goals that all of us share. How to do that effectively without drawing this out over us, in conversation for 12 straight meetings with the public and all of our staff, which feels unwieldy. How do we do this effectively?
Did you bring your crystal ball first?
Yeah.
Thanks, Commissioner. I mean,
Sorry to put you on the
thank
spot here, Brian.
Yeah, no, Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental and Planning Services. Yeah, so I mean, first I would say this is clearly a commission discussion. I mean, I think in the sense that really trying to understand what you all would like to see will give staff some clear direction for what we could help facilitate, right? So this is a good start to that conversation. But what I would say I have seen work, when we were in the waterfront district example, was, a fair number of staff, kind of compiling a series of options, things to ask some kind of specific questions, rather open-ended questions. You're going to get a lot of different answers, and sometimes, from our experience, it looks like you're asking, but then not able to do any of that. So my experience has been you want to try to be specific about what you're trying to get feedback on. So that's where I think staff could help with that, to say, okay, what are the different topics that would be worth discussing, because there's some things we would have flexibility on, there's some things we wouldn't. So having an open house is really is a good way to approach some of these things, where you can get questions, but you're not committing to a big change, which maybe wasn't realistic. So the structure of the process matters too. So it would be helpful to hear the commission discussion on what you'd like to see accomplished, and and then we could make some recommendations on maybe how that could be set up. So it really depends on what the commission would like to see the outcome be, whether or not specifically like a given use, but like what's the outcome? Is it a report? Is it just more community engagement? Is it an overall master plan, a port plan? What is the outcome? Because that really matters then on what your the approach you would take for something like this. So I think more commission discussion would be helpful to get some clarity for staff.
Yep, and I'll just go back to the airport, just because that's where we're going to start. But it was just looking at possibly doing a light industrial parcel, and then looking at the roads, and looking at the infrastructure, and trying to figure out what would go there next. And how could you help that become more successful? Or what does Alpha Tech or Alpha need for their airport operations that is going to help them? And if we're going to limit this to light industrial, what are the businesses that we specifically want to attract, so that they all build together, and that they all build in a fashion that we've kind of designed, that we know what we're looking for when we go out for it? So that really my goal is to say, how do we zero in on the properties that we have? I'd say if you're a private developer, you'd build an industrial ground. You may have 100 acres, but you'll have a pretty good idea of how that's going to play out over the years and what you want to see there. I kind of want to feel the same thing about whatever industrial area we're going in, or even if we're going to the waterfront. What's the next step? What does it look like? What's going to play off the other one really well? If we go to the waterfront and we're keeping the pump track and the container village, then what's the next piece of parcel going to look like? And what do the neighbors think about that? And what do the developers of the condo and the board mill building feel about that? I'll go on to the marine trade side. If we're going to start to build out the shipping terminal and we're going to start to move things, what does that mean? What are the sensibilities of the neighborhood and who are those?
Well, I think we need to come to a consensus on where we're going to go. Are we going to the waterfront, or are we going to the airport, or?
I'd like to
That's
start with the airport.
that's the first thing we've got to get to.
I'd like to start with the airport just because I think it'd be easier.
So starting with the airport, it seems like the objective is really to develop a business development plan, right? We're looking to have a business development plan for what we could expect to see occur in the next, say, 10 years.
So Tyler, can I ask you a question? You're the man in the mix out there with the economic development stuff. What do you see as businesses that are entertaining coming to our areas? I mean, that would kind of give us some direction as to how to think.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Tyler Schroeder, Economic Development Director. In this conversation, I hearken back to the industrial land study that we're currently doing with Mall Foster. They're going to be looking at each individual industrial area and providing some cut sheets for each one to identify which parcels are developed, who is currently operating at that location, what sector that industry is in, and which areas are vacant. And so maybe we could use that information to help provide more of the economic factors that are going into play. And that study is also going to make an indication of recommending what sectors may be interested in coming to here, to the county, and then also which have expanded over the last 14 years since 2010. So it's going to look at some building square footage and where it goes. We always recognize the maritime industry, right, and the economy that's associated with it. We're looking more specifically into food processing and cold storage, both maritime and agriculture. There's a big economic base to both of those from a sector standpoint. Wood processing is actually a sector that countywide people are interested in and see it to be a foundation. And there's a few others that we'll be able to report out to the commission on that. But as the industrial land study is going to be countywide through the ADO.
But we'll include our airport property.
But it'll include cut sheets for these specific areas. So it'll provide a little bit more detail on which industries are there, how many employees are there in those, and it may be able to help us have a baseline for this conversation as we put together a business development plan for certain locations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and when you go to when you go to a couple of those areas, and you've got a couple of businesses that may need more parking, and I'll use two current examples. One of them is clearly the granary needs parking for their business to survive, and the people in that building are going to be economically stressed if they don't get it. I'll say the same thing for our emergency center out at the airport. I mean, we just took away their parking lot. Right, and they do trainings for BP and they do trainings for the refineries, and there are times when they just have an overflow of traffic. So talking to those stakeholders about what their needs are so that they're accommodated in our growth plan as we go, which means that all of those people who are using those properties currently would have a say in what we hear back and what do they need and what, and I know it's cumbersome and I know it's time consuming, but to me, it's how do you accommodate the needs of the people we currently have there so that they can not only thrive, but they succeed in a way that they currently can't envision. So what do we put there that helps them? And it's that kind of a discussion with our current customers that I would like to have. And then I would like to see how the neighboring neighborhood is going to be impacted. One of the things I learned by doing the city club just last week was, the discussion about traffic from the industrial areas out to the main ground. If you just have that discussion with people and they understand why it's necessary and why the industrial ground's there and that there aren't any other options, you've got to take that route. So really it's just more of a communication for me. How do you get the people in the room to hear what we're doing, why we're doing it, have that conversation with us so that everybody feels heard? I've had people that were livid with us for some of the industrial ground decisions that were made, that actually listened to that discussion and came back and said, you know what, you guys, this is well thought out, you guys are doing what's fine. Part of my other business discussion was to tell you about the city club, but I'm doing that now, so we can take that off. And those are the kind of discussions that I like to have in the community, so that they know when the traffic impacts are gonna be there. You've got the beverage company out there, if you're gonna put a light industrial area behind it or beside it, there's gonna be more trucks. What does that mean? What are the transportation routes? How do you let the neighborhood go? What's gonna be there? How do you make that something that everybody buys into is kind
Okay,
of my,
let's get back to what we're gonna focus on.
less than the,
We need to make a decision on what we're gonna focus on.
I'm like water on a hot skillet.
I feel like what would be
I lost Dan.
productive for me would be maybe a two meeting approach, where one, there's an opportunity for us to have a focused conversation on a particular property, like the airport. At that meeting, we would have some input from staff who are out there, and maybe some of the key sectors that are also operating, some of our key business partners or key strategic partners that are operating out there. Then we can formulate some direction for where we think we want to go in the next few years with that property. And then after we've formulated some idea, that makes for a good opportunity for the public to hear that plan and to comment on it. That's kind of a two-step approach, where I think there's clearly a need for us to have that focused conversation. That's always something I welcome. And then for us to communicate and get that feedback. Keeps it focused for the public, because we don't want to just give them like pie in the sky, tell us anything and everything you want. Okay, we're not going to get very good responses.
Yeah.
We've got to keep that focused.
And that's the approach that we were basically taking with the waterfront. I mean, that's the direction that we were going. That to do that, get some feedback from the commission. Explain to you all the lay of the land. I mean, there's lots of nuance to all the things that are already in place. What we do have flexibility on, what we don't, that kind of thing. So that then we can then say, okay, if we're going to go out and ask for input on from the public on certain things, or is it more like you just have an open house like we did with Bellingham Shipping Terminal? Is it a series of listening sessions, whatever? But each area we could definitely map out, the course of the next number of months, or even identify, okay, hearing this conversation, a next step from staff would be to make a list of the different areas that we could do that two-part kind of process on. Some of you may fall away and say, no, we don't need to do that on that one. That one's already on autopilot, or this one needs a lot more work. So just understanding what the hope was, but as a reminder, one of the next commission meetings, we'll be bringing forward the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements, which is actually the document that has all of the existing master plans. There are adopted master plans for all of these areas, including the airport, industrial park, the Bellingham Shipping Terminal, FMIP, Blaine. So we're dusting those off and reminding where we're actually at and already have in place could be really helpful too. So we could go through that at the next commission meeting as well, maybe.
And I did go back through on the website and look at some of those old plans.
Yeah.
And some of them go back 20.
Oh yeah, some of them are way out of date.
Way out of
Right.
date.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So it's just a matter of, it's 2025, right? And then to your point, if we could just take that little property that you were talking about and go out in concentric circles and say, here's what we want to do around this one, and then here's where this is going to look. Just kind of zooming back, it can all be done verbally. It doesn't have to be done any other way, but having that idea in our heads and having everybody understand. But I think as much as I want that plan in place, I also want the public to feel like they were heard. I want everybody to have their say. As many people who are objecting to the traffic from gravel going up the road, just listening and having them hear it and knowing what we're doing it and why we're doing it means the world.
I just throw something out there that just because the plan was done several years ago doesn't mean we should just chink in the garbage can.
Oh, I didn't say that.
People several years ago had some pretty good visions too, and some pretty good ideas, and it gives us a basis to maybe adjust and dust off and clean up.
Yeah.
But you look at the last.
To fit it into 2025.
But you look at the last visual that anybody has on the waterfront, and it's the Harcourt drawing with all of those buildings and the park going through.
That's the last visual I don't have.
But that's the last visual that's there, right? We don't have another visual painted for that particular.
It's not necessarily the Harcourt drawing. It was a plan that was done with the Port Commission, the City Council, Port staff. Harcourt was one of the people at the table. We made them pay for it, but it was a lot more than just Harcourt that did the
It
plan.
was a joint effort.
But you have to admit, that's not the plan in play.
Well, I mean, I would.
But we don't know that yet.
That's what I'd like to know.
I think it is.
Is that the plan
It is the
in play?
adopted plan. So it is the port.
That's how it's going to look?
Well, no, it's not how it's going to look. The plan is
That's the
is the basis for decision making on all projects moving forward. So it is the sub-area plan that's adopted through the city, adopted by the Port Commission. It has an implementation strategy, it has all that information, and there are opportunities to kind of revisit that. But it is the starting point, and it is the adopted plan. And so the visuals, though, those were just renderings to kind of give a general feel for what that could look like. On a project-by-project basis, it's going to be much different. But the general footprint of the parks, the location of building pads, location of the arterials, view corridors, that's adopted through the legislative process of the city.
And this comes back to my point, to be careful. We have to be careful what we put out there, because when you put something out there, just like that rendering, even you have taken it to heart. And that's what happens. And I don't think it would behoove the commission to put things out before we know what we're putting out, because once you, just like the marina that was gonna go in the ASB pond, that was the gospel, and when it got changed, things were upset. Why are we not doing that? Well, monetarily, it didn't work. But, so, I understand what you're saying, but all I do is I keep cautioning, be careful how fast and what you throw out there, because it may not be what's gonna happen. And to the point that the sub-area plan over there has all been approved by this commission and by the city. And now the buildings may not look the same, but it's supposed to be something of that stature there.
Yeah,
So we don't, it's not that we don't have a plan, we just don't know exactly what the structures will look like when they're put up there.
And I cautioned when I first brought this up last year, that's not my intent. The intent is not to do that. It's just, I want a visual. I want to see what's going to go where. And if we're going to RFP a piece of property, maybe the alcohol building is next. And we go to the alcohol building and we say, what should go there? Based on the board mill being there and based on what we see coming around it. So what should go there? And what about the lots behind it? How is that going to fit in? Just to give us a general idea in 2025, what we're looking for. Because I will guarantee you, 2025 is very different from when that was put together. Right now, we're more focused on housing. And housing is a huge process, and it's probably going to be more residential than what we had anticipated then. Things have changed.
Sure.
I just think it's time to visit that.
And I would just say the things we did start to set in motion, like Rob mentioned, was that, we have started working with the city team because, there are partners down there. And so one of the things that we thought would be maybe, because of the plan, the main core parts are in place, that the discussion could focus more about the implementation strategy over time. So, but not locking into specific uses, but that's starting to have that conversation. So that's what that I got from what I thought the kind of the direction was. And that seemed like a really fruitful conversation. And so we're also, needing to bring the city council up to speed, because that's a lot of new folks there too, who weren't involved back when the sub-area plan. So we were kind of already setting that in motion with getting the waterfront kind of as the next topic for discussion, knowing that it wasn't necessarily a large-scale change to the adopted plan, but we could definitely start talking about those things and getting feedback from them. And those are the things we would solicit input from the community too.
And for the record, I believe this discussion is incredibly healthy. Right, just having this discussion back and forth, I think is incredibly healthy and getting it out there.
Yeah.
So on our residential in that area, where are we at on percentage-wise? If let's just say we were all built out, at this point with what's been done there, what percentage are we at of our residential?
That I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at that one for sure, but I could bring that back to you. It's less than what we're not as far along as we wanted to be on the time frame,
Right.
Of course, as we all know. But yeah, we're seeing about the same mix of what we had built into the plan.
So it's coming along like it's supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can I just ask that we have a meeting scheduled fairly soon about the airport and let's sit down, just the three of us, and I mean, it's an open
Sit down to
meeting.
three of us, it's an
Well-
open meeting.
But I want to discuss, what is it we want to see out of that? Just, I don't want to prescribe it, I just want to have that discussion. I want to talk about the individual lots and see what's going where, what we have planned for going where, and just maybe an afternoon.
I like the two-step approach that Commissioner Shepard outlined. I suggest we go to that, where we have a meeting with commissioners and staff, and we kind of go through, set up what we want to see out of an open house type meeting, and then we follow that meeting up a couple weeks later with an open house.
I'm there. Yeah, I'm absolutely on that page.
Okay. Let's just make sure we see kind of a rough agenda ahead of time so we can make sure we're on the same page.
And maybe an aerial overlay so that we can know.
Yeah, we'll bring aerials. Yeah, that's easy.
But maybe beforehand. So just show me the parcels that are in the airport industrial park that we have control over. What's available, what's not, what's wetland? Put a red mark through what we can't build on and.
So can we do this with our regular meeting? Can we say start earlier in the afternoon? Instead of doing an executive session, let's say we start earlier and make it on the same day. So we're not having two meetings with what we can get done in one. I mean, consolidate it so that whether we would do that first before our regular meeting or do it in the second half of the regular meeting?
I have no dog in that hunt.
If I could recommend, you could do like a work study session, say in the morning, have a little break, and then come back for the regular meeting. Is that the type of thing you're thinking about?
Maybe come in at 9 o'clock and then.
And just do it on our regular Tuesday meeting day.
Yeah, you absolutely could do that. I would just say, be careful about that, because you don't want to have one drift into the other, or for that kind of work study session, it sounds like a lot of work to do to bleed into the regular commission meeting, and then you end up
Right.
still being here kind of late.
No, I get that.
Agreed.
I wouldn't think it'd last any more than a couple hours.
You know how I can talk.
Oh, yeah, but we can fix that. The gavel's over here now.
All right, well, I think we've got a plan for going forward. We've got a topic and some objective of where we could try and get.
So when would we want to do that? Would we want to do that in an April meeting?
Why don't we shoot for the first meeting in April, if that works for everyone?
I'm fine with that. You fine with that?
Yeah,
So it's the week before spring break.
that's the week before spring break. That's fine. then.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think it's April 4th.
Yeah.
Brian, you're good with that too?
April 1st.
Oh, April Fool's Day.
Fool's Day.
All right.
Perfect.
Okay.
So we're at, we're at the end of our meeting, public comment period. Do we have anyone that wants to throw some lettuce or any kind of vegetables? Ah, Dan, I knew it.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dan Tucker, Whatcom Working Waterfront Coalition. Just listening to a couple of the presentations, I wanted to put out some thoughts to one, in talking about the marina tenants, please don't forget the commercial tenants that are not fishers. So folks like Island Opportunity Charters, Motor Vessels David B., who operate commercial businesses with their vessels, but they're not commercial fishing, with the idea to include them in discussions for special rates and also other benefits that those commercial fishing businesses get in terms of, for example, selling a business if they were to ever do so and having a slip for that vessel still remain. So just a shameless plug for those businesses that are operating out of the marina as well. Also, just a friendly note to remember that in amongst planning for the pavilion, a plug for our fishing community, that pavilion is meant for net mending throughout the shoulder season. So please remember that when you're booking and building those plans. And finally, just echoing the sentiment that Stephanie had shared about the staff being great to work with. That's been our experience as well in renting those facilities, and just a thank you out to the staff that work at those facilities and help manage those properties. They have been wonderful to work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for bringing up the other businesses as well as the comment. Thank you. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? Okay, we're going to move on to other business.
There is not a chance in hell I'm going to bring anything else to the table.
Commissioner Shepard.
All right. I just wanted to thank everybody who helped put on the event today in Blaine, focused on the activation of the maritime area there. Steve Seymour and his team, along with the Grangers, did a whole bunch of work. And we had good representation by staff, including Tiffany, Tyler, John, and our harbor master, Andy, all there. It was a nice event, so thanks for everyone who helped put that on. Also, I asked Rob today about a presentation on updating us on impacts from of cross-traffic border travel, and I thought it would be good for Tyler and possibly Lori Troutman from up at Western to give us an update on what we're seeing on impacts for local businesses with drop in Canadian traffic. It's going to impact already is impacting a number of local business sectors. It's going to hit our airport as well, and we just want to be apprised as possible going forward. So that's something I asked for an upcoming meeting.
On that note, I got a call today from Mike at Blaine City Council, and he said, you wouldn't believe how it's impacted the Chevron. He goes, I need you guys to come back up here and talk to us again, because right now we're dying.
Yeah, it's going to continue. I think we're just seeing the start of some of the ongoing destabilization that's happening, and it's definitely impacting our Canadian partners and customers. So that's it for me. Thanks.
So I'm going to reclaim my last one just because we did have a presentation before the City Club, and the City Club was anxious to hear about how ports work. And they brought up, I can't remember the port commissioner from Seattle.
Was that Fellman?
Commissioner Fred Fellman.
Fred Fellman.
And then Kathy Pittis from
Anacortes. And then Tyler Shorter was there as the Economic Development, and then I was there for the Port Commission view. And it was a group of people, all of them, all different makeups. But a lot of the questions came in around how we do business, what is the port here for? And I can't tell you how good that went. That City Club was a home run just because, first of all, the education on what a port is for was not clearly understood. And so when Kathy Pittis went through, here's the inception of the ports and how they got established and what they were established for, why we protect our waterfronts. We had a discussion about, how Weyerhaeuser and the railroads controlled the waterfront early on, and that the ports were established to try to keep commerce from going through. So we had a history lesson that was incredible. We talked to the Port of Seattle about their stresses with housing and industrial ground. They've got the same stresses that we have here. It was really nice to have Seattle support us in that effort. And then Tyler did a masterful job of explaining what economic development looks like. And then we just went through the gravel discussion and how the lessons learned part of that, and what we learned about community engagement, what we learned about vetting customers, and all the rest of it. So we really just had a great one. I had a number of people who had previously not been fans of the port come up to me and say that was probably the most impactful meeting that they've been to around the port and port business. But it started with education, and it started with that communication. I mean, that's really what's driving me too on the other stuff, is that the more engagement you have, the more you talk, you build up a bank account. And I just think that's just so important. But the City Club was just a home run. Kathy Pittis is phenomenal. Having Commissioner from Seattle, what is his name? Forget it.
Commissioner Fellerman.
His expertise is marine. And so we kind of got off a little bit on how large boats impact orcas, and we had a couple of people in there that wanted to talk about that. So it was really an interesting presentation, that's all. It's on YouTube if you ever want to see it. It's also on the City Club website if you want to tune into that. It was a great one. And listen to the questions that were asked.
Thanks, I'll do that. I wasn't there, so. And you didn't have anything further. Okay, I got a couple things. One, I've got a conflict on our May 20th meeting. My grandson is graduating in Arizona, And if I want to remain in the family, I have to be there. And it's going to be going on right through in the afternoon when this meeting is supposed to be going on. So I'm asking my fellow commissioners if there's a day we can move that meeting to, if it's the next week or a different day of the week, or.
So it's not a week where we have 5 Tuesdays. That always makes for an easy move. So what I would suggest, we just try and pack the agenda on the 6th of May, and then we do the same on the 3rd of June, and we just cancel the meeting on the 20th. That'd be my suggestion.
That's fine with me. Yep.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, so we already have one on the 6th.
Yep.
And then, yeah. If it turns out that it's too much for the 6th, do you want to just?
Then we can talk about doing it on the 13th or the 27th. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Fine.
Thank you. The other thing is when I've been home, I've gone up and down the guide coming in and leaving. Truck traffic is not very good. I'm still have real heartburn with the fact that the city of Bellingham didn't include us in the conversations with the Department of Transportation about closing that northbound I-5 on-ramp. I think that was a big mistake. It was very impactful to our truck route that was built to get those trucks to the freeway. So, other than the city just closing and not really doing anything out the road further, or they moved all the traffic through Bakerview, and that intersection is jammed up with trucks. There was 2 trucks going down guide, traffic was backed up behind them, and they're in the slow lane, fast lane. So, I don't know that they really solved anything there, but they certainly affected our ability to get things out of here. And if we're gonna grow that ASB pond into something there, they've certainly impacted our ability to move, goods out of our port and in. So, I don't know who we talked to at the city to make them understand that they want to be included in everything we're doing. It's about time they included us in everything they're doing. We don't need any more surprises like that one, because that one is not a good one. It was a ridiculous thing, in my opinion, to do without talking to the people that the truck route was built for.
Yeah, I think, as I discussed earlier, we are the ADOs, so I think it's important for us to communicate with all of them as often as we can about impacts on business. So another reason to have them in a room with us.
Again, thank you for moving that date for me. I appreciate it, and I can stay in my family now. Anything else, gentlemen? Rob, anything? No one's got anything? One last chirp for public comment. If anybody wants to say something, I'll give you one last chance. Meeting adjourned.